She abandoned her shift and stole company records. Security, remove her.
The woman you fired pawned her wedding ring to save my life. I am Margaret Whitmore, founder of this company. Mrs. Whitmore, I had no idea who she was.
You are 47 minutes late. Richard Kane pointed toward the clock on the wall, then ripped the employee badge from Emily's neck. She stood in the management office with snow soaking her uniform, one hand holding a bag of medicine, and the other gripping a pawn ticket. Richard had no idea that the small object she had just pawned would soon become evidence capable of exposing every polished report he had created. An elderly woman had a heart attack near the train station, Emily explained. I called ahead to let you know. Richard did not even look at the written confirmation she held out. Homeless people in Philadelphia have a different story every night. You are paid to arrive on time, not to pretend you are a hero. 75 minutes earlier, Emily had been standing beneath the train station awning, listening as Lucas tried to hide the fear in his voice over the phone. The landlord came again, Mom. He said that if we do not pay by tomorrow morning, he is going to send us a notice to leave. Emily closed her eyes. She was already 2 months behind on rent, and the money in her wallet would cover only part of what she owed. I will handle it. Lock the door, eat dinner, and finish your homework. I could change schools. A place farther away might be cheaper. You are not leaving your school. That is my responsibility. She ended the call and stepped out of the station. Snow blew sideways across the street. A young delivery rider stood beside his bicycle, rubbing his purple hands together. Use these. Emily pulled a spare pair of gloves from her bag and handed them to him. What about you? The building where I work has heat. She had just turned away when she heard someone struggling to breathe. On a bench near the train entrance, an elderly woman in a worn coat was clutching her chest. Her face was pale, and her lips trembled from the cold. Emily knelt beside her. Can you hear me? The woman nodded, but she could not finish a sentence. Emily called emergency services, turned on the speaker, and followed the dispatcher's instructions. She kept the woman seated, loosened her collar, and watched her breathing. Emily stayed even as the time for her shift approached. When the pain eased slightly, Emily learned that someone had stolen the woman's purse. Her heart medicine, identification, phone, and money had all been inside it. My name is Margaret, the woman said weakly. The pharmacy on Arch Street has my prescription. Because of the snowstorm, the ambulance could not reach them immediately. Emily could have left Margaret with the station police and rushed to work. Instead, she helped Margaret stand and took her to a nearby pharmacy that remained open through the night. Daniel Cho, the pharmacist, checked the records, confirmed that Margaret's heart prescription was still valid, and contacted the doctor on duty. But Margaret had no insurance card, identification, or way to pay. Emily opened her wallet. Most of her money was sealed inside an envelope marked for rent, while the cash outside it was not enough to purchase the medicine. She called Richard. I am handling a medical emergency. I may be about 40 minutes late. Leave her with the police and come to work immediately, Richard replied. If you miss your shift, I will record it as job abandonment. Emily looked at Margaret, trembling in the chair. Richard had been given an opportunity to respond with basic fairness, but he ended the call. Beside the pharmacy was a pawn shop preparing to close. Emily walked inside and removed her wedding ring. Engraved inside were the words, M&E, always home. The owner examined the ring, then looked at her. Are you certain? You have only 30 days to reclaim it. Emily opened her wallet and saw a photograph of Mark holding Lucas on the front steps of their home. The ring was the last possession she still had from the husband she had lost 4 years earlier. I am certain. The money from the ring was enough to purchase the medicine and pay for a ride that would take Margaret somewhere safe. When Emily returned, the elderly woman noticed her empty finger. "What did you just sell?" "It was only an object." "No, I saw the way you looked at it." Emily remained silent for a moment before answering. "On the day my husband died, he called me. I was working, and I thought I would call him back later. I never had the chance. I will not keep walking when I know someone needs help." She handed Margaret the medicine, wrapped her only scarf around the woman's shoulders, and wrote her phone number on the pharmacy receipt. "If you have trouble breathing again, call emergency services first, then call me." Margaret looked at the Whitmore logo on Emily's employee badge. "You work at Whitmore Plaza?" "The night shift." "What are the working conditions like? Is the complaint hotline truly confidential?" The question made Emily pause. She did not mention the unpaid rent or her own missing hours. She only said, "Several employees have not received all of their overtime pay. They filed complaints, but nothing changed." Margaret looked at her as though she were memorizing every word. A senior support center confirmed that a vehicle would pick Margaret up near Whitmore Plaza. When they arrived, Margaret unexpectedly pointed toward a narrow door along the side of the building. "The employee entrance is over there. It will keep us out of the wind." Emily looked surprised. "Have you been here before?" "A very long time ago." They entered through the side hallway. Margaret waited in the lobby for several minutes while Emily placed the bag of medicine beside her. When the support vehicle arrived, Emily helped Margaret outside, then ran directly to the management office. But Richard refused to examine the pawn ticket, the pharmacy confirmation, or her call history. "You are going to sign a statement saying that you abandoned your shift without authorization." "I called before my shift. Signing that would be a lie." Richard crushed the document in his hand and threw Emily's employee badge into the trash. "Then you are fired. You only have a few hours before your rent is due, correct?" Emily turned pale, but she did not take the pen. "If you walk out without signing," Richard continued, "I will make sure you never find another cleaning job in any major building in this city." Emily picked up the pawn ticket, zipped her coat, and left. Inside her pocket, the hand that no longer wore a wedding ring tightened into a fist. After the office became quiet, Richard noticed a silver pin shaped like the letter W lying beside the medicine bag. He picked it up and immediately recognized the symbol. Pins like that had been created exclusively for members of the Whitmore family. His expression changed. Richard called building security and demanded information about the elderly woman who had appeared in the lobby. Before sunrise, the phone on his desk rang. The call came from the office of the chief executive officer. The woman Emily Carter brought into the lobby was Margaret Whitmore, the voice on the other end said. "She has ordered us to lock all payroll data immediately." Richard was still holding the phone when the call ended. The silver pin, shaped like the letter W, lay on his desk, cold beneath the office lights. Only minutes earlier, he had believed that he had fired a powerless cleaning worker. Now, the woman he had dismissed as homeless carried the Whitmore name. Emily knew nothing about the call. She returned to her small apartment as dawn approached. Lucas was still awake on the couch, with his backpack and the overdue rent notice beside him. "I lost my job," Emily said. "I will find another one." She hid her left hand inside her coat pocket, but Lucas noticed that her ring finger was bare. "Where's Dad's ring?" Emily tried to smile. I only pawned it temporarily to buy medicine for the elderly woman. When I have enough money, I will get it back. Lucas lowered his head. He knew that the words, "Always home," engraved inside the ring, made it the last keepsake his father had left behind. But he did not blame his mother. He took the folded family photograph from his backpack and placed it in her hand. The ring helps us remember Dad. But what you did is what would make him proud. Emily pulled her son into her arms. For the first time that night, she allowed herself to cry. Her phone suddenly rang. An employee from Whitmore Plaza asked her to return to the building that morning. Emily assumed Richard wanted to force her to sign a resignation statement to prevent a complaint. She put on her still damp coat and placed the pawn ticket, the pharmacy confirmation, and an envelope containing copied time records inside her bag. At Whitmore Plaza, Richard was walking through the lobby, ordering employees to clean the floors again, hide every maintenance cart, and make sure no cleaning workers were visible when the executives arrived. "No one speaks to the visitors," he shouted. "If anyone asks questions, tell them that everything is operating normally." When Emily entered, Richard pulled her into his office. "I can reinstate you." Emily looked at the document on the desk. "Under what conditions?" "You confirm that you misunderstood the payroll adjustments, say nothing about being fired, and sign a revised report stating that your absence last night was caused by a personal matter." This was Richard's third opportunity to correct what he had done, but he still wanted only to hide it. Emily pushed the document back toward him. "I will not exchange my job for a lie." "Then you have no reason to remain here." Richard called security. "Remove her before the visitors arrive." Emily had just been escorted toward the glass doors when 3 black limousines stopped in front of the building. Margaret stepped out of the first vehicle wearing an elegant coat, accompanied by Jonathan Whitmore and her private physician. The second vehicle brought independent members of the board of directors. Sarah Whitmore emerged from the final car with a labor attorney and a digital audit team. Richard immediately stepped forward with a respectful smile. "Mrs. Whitmore, it is an honor to welcome you. I was very sorry to hear about what happened to you last night." He spoke as though he had never seen Margaret before. She walked directly past him. "Emily Carter." Everyone in the lobby turned around. Margaret stopped in front of Emily and took her bare hand. "My name is Margaret Whitmore. I founded Whitmore Health Group, and I remain the corporation's largest voting shareholder." The employees standing behind the marble columns froze. Richard could no longer maintain his smile. In front of everyone, Margaret explained that Emily had called emergency services, remained beside her, and pawned her wedding ring to purchase the medicine she needed. But Margaret did not offer Emily money or announce that she would receive an executive position. "I want to know why an employee was fired while responding to a medical emergency." Richard recovered his calm tone. "Miss Carter invented the story to hide the fact that she abandoned her shift without authorization. She also has a history of creating dissatisfaction among the staff." Emily did not argue. She handed the pawn ticket, the pharmacy confirmation, and her call history to Sarah. "I called Mr. Kane before my shift. He told me to leave Mrs. Whitmore behind." Sarah reviewed each timestamp, then called the pharmacy. Daniel Cho confirmed in a recorded statement that Margaret had shown symptoms of a heart problem, that Emily had paid for the prescription, and that she had remained with Margaret throughout the emergency. The pharmacy's security cameras also confirmed the exact time of the transaction. Sarah turned toward the building's security department. "Restore the footage from the lobby and employee entrance last night." Richard answered too quickly. The system failed during that exact period. "Both cameras failed at the same time?" Sarah asked. "The equipment is old. I already requested maintenance. Margaret looked at the envelope Emily was holding. What is inside that? Emily remained silent for several seconds before opening it. I submitted 4 complaints about unpaid overtime being removed from our records. None of them received a response. Jonathan frowned. Whitmore Plaza's reports state that there have been no formal labor complaints during the past 2 years. The audit team connected to the company server. Within minutes, they discovered that every email containing the words overtime, wage complaint, or cane had been automatically redirected to a private management folder instead of reaching the ethics department. Richard folded his arms. That was only a spam filter. Miss Carter had no authority to copy internal documents. What she is doing is data theft. Rosa and several other cleaning workers were standing nearby. Richard looked directly at them. He did not need to threaten them aloud. They all understood that he still controlled their schedules and health insurance. Rosa lowered her eyes. No one stepped forward. Margaret asked Emily, "Do you have evidence that does not depend on email records?" Emily removed copies of work schedules and payroll statements. She pointed to every deleted line and every unpaid shift. One time record carried Jonathan's electronic approval signature. Richard immediately focused on that detail. Every adjustment was approved by the chief executive officer. If there was misconduct, I am not the only person responsible. Jonathan stared at the signature bearing his name. I have never seen this detailed time record. The audit team continued tracing account access. They discovered that Richard's administrative account had privileges far beyond what a building manager should have possessed. At 2 in the morning, that account had altered 312 hours of overtime. But entry records and Richard's travel schedule showed that he had been in another city at the time. Sarah studied the data, then turned toward Jonathan. Either his account has been compromised for years, or someone in executive leadership has been helping Kane conceal this. Sarah ordered the technical team to preserve the servers immediately and suspend all of Richard's access privileges. He stepped forward, his voice sharp with anger. Whitmore Plaza cannot operate without me. You are destroying this entire building because of accusations made by a cleaning worker who was just fired. Suspending access is not a declaration of guilt, Sarah replied. It is how we prevent evidence from being altered again. Jonathan reviewed the reports he had previously signed. They contained only summaries of labor costs, with no detailed list of individual adjustments. After he approved them, a copy of his authentication code had been used to modify payroll records under his name. The audit team traced the Internet Protocol address and discovered that Richard had created a secondary account with a name almost identical to Jonathan's executive account. On the screen, only one small character distinguished the two accounts. The orders that erased 312 hours of overtime had been issued through the fraudulent account. But the missing wages had not been transferred directly into Richard's personal account. They had been recorded as payments to Keystone Workforce Solutions, a staffing contractor registered under the name of Richard's brother-in-law. Keystone's employee list contained dozens of temporary cleaning workers who did not exist. They had no valid tax records, no access badges, no scheduled shifts, and no images on security cameras. Richard used part of the stolen money to make Whitmore Plaza's labor cost numbers appear more efficient. The rest was moved through false service invoices for his personal benefit. Richard pointed toward the envelope in Emily's hands. She stole company records. Documents obtained illegally cannot be used as evidence. Sarah answered calmly. Emily kept only copies of schedules and payroll statements directly related to herself and her co-workers. The primary data was legally recovered from the corporate servers by independent auditors. This investigation does not depend on her envelope. Margaret turned toward the cleaning workers gathered behind the marble columns. If any of you have had working hours removed, please step forward. Every statement will be protected. Richard stared at them. If you make false accusations against management, do not expect to keep your health insurance. It was his final opportunity to admit what he had done. Once again, he chose intimidation. Rosa Delgado stepped forward first. Her hands trembled, but her voice was clear. My husband is receiving cancer treatment. I once asked about 16 missing overtime hours. After that, Mr. Kane sent me a message saying that if I continued complaining, he would cut my schedule in half. She handed her phone to Sarah. The message still showed its original date and time. Another cleaning worker came forward with a payroll statement. Then a third employee presented a signed work schedule. One by one, more people stepped out of the crowd. The silence Richard had depended on for years began to collapse. Maria from the security department appeared carrying an incident report. On the night Emily was fired, Mr. Kane ordered me to delete the lobby and employee entrance footage. I marked the request as unusual, but I was too afraid to refuse. Richard turned toward her. You will lose your job for revealing security procedures. Perhaps, Maria replied, but I do not want to keep my job by helping you destroy evidence. Richard did not know that the camera system maintained an automatic backup on the external security company's servers. The recovered footage began playing across the screens in the lobby. The video showed Emily bringing Margaret inside to protect her from the snowstorm. Richard saw the elderly woman, recognized the silver pin shaped like the letter W, and still ripped Emily's employee badge away, threw it into the trash, and ordered the security records deleted. He knew Margaret was connected to the Whitmore family before he attempted to conceal what had happened. Margaret stepped forward and stood beside Emily. I am Margaret Whitmore, the founder of Whitmore Health Group. Emily Carter saved my life without knowing who I was. But my identity is not the only evidence that matters. What decides this case is the data, the witnesses, and the records these workers had the courage to preserve. Sarah displayed the fraudulent account, the altered payroll records, the blocked complaints, the payments to the non-existent staffing company, the threatening message sent to Rosa, and the order to delete the security footage. Then the audit team discovered something even more serious. Richard's labor optimization model had been tested at 5 additional buildings. 63 workers had lost working hours, health insurance, scheduled shifts, or their jobs after filing complaints. The misconduct was no longer only about Emily or Whitmore Plaza. The board suspended Richard in front of the employees and building tenants. His access privileges were permanently terminated. The records were referred to labor investigators and prosecutors, and every payment connected to Keystone Workforce Solutions was frozen. Jonathan stepped forward with a heavy expression. I did not personally alter the payroll records, but I signed the savings reports without asking how those savings had been created. I am voluntarily stepping away from direct executive authority while my responsibility for this failure of oversight is examined. Richard looked toward Margaret. You can handle this internally. If this becomes public, the corporation's reputation will be destroyed. Margaret shook her head. A reputation cannot be protected by hiding the people who were harmed. After the confrontation, the board offered Emily a large financial payment and an honorary position. She placed the envelope of payroll records on the table. Begin by returning what belongs to them, their wages, overtime pay, health insurance, and the jobs that were taken away. After that, we can talk about me. The corporation created a compensation fund, hired an independent organization to manage complaints, and added employee representatives to the ethics committee. Workers who had been dismissed for speaking out were given the right to return to their jobs. Emily agreed to return to Whitmore Plaza while participating in a facilities management training program. She did not want a promotion simply because she had saved Margaret. Every evaluation of her ability was conducted through a transparent process. Several days later, Margaret and Lucas accompanied Emily to the pawn shop. Margaret did not personally buy back the ring as a gift from a powerful woman. Instead, the corporation legally reimbursed Emily for the medical costs and wages she had lost. Emily used part of that payment to reclaim the ring herself. When she placed the ring engraved with the words M&E, always home, back on her finger, Lucas wrapped his arms around her. Emily understood that protecting Mark's memory did not require her to turn away from another person's suffering. 1 year later, Emily became the employee welfare coordinator at Whitmore Plaza after completing her training. Rosa received every dollar of missing overtime pay, her health insurance was restored, and she became the first cleaning employee to serve as a representative on the Workplace Welfare Committee. All 63 affected workers received their missing wages, restored benefits, and interest for the delayed payments. Inside the drawer of her new desk, Emily kept a copy of the pawn ticket. The wedding ring was back on her hand, but that small piece of paper reminded her that one choice made on a freezing night had helped 63 families find justice. She looked at Lucas and said, "Your father did not return with the ring, but the kindness he taught us returned through the lives of 63 families. If that ring were the final keepsake from someone you loved, would you be willing to pawn it to save a stranger the way Emily did?" Share your answer and continue following Stewart Stories, where we tell stories of love, hope, and justice.